Hello and welcome to Hilltopodcast. This is an all-volunteer project, and I am Tony Alvarado, your facilitator. This is meant to be a pilot project of proposed audio podcast featuring conversations with former students and alumni, not just of the business school, but of the entire university at St. Edward's here in Austin, Texas. Hopefully, we will have various alumni telling us and sharing stories about their entrepreneurial journey. This is not an official activity of the university, nor is it sponsored or approved by St. Edward's, and no reliance should be placed on whether or not it's going to continue. But hopefully, we will make it interesting, and we look forward to having a podcast that is by, of, and for students. So I think we're ready to get started with our first guest. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you. And you are one of our outstanding alumni, digital media management major, former student of mine. I've been privileged to stay in contact with you over the years, and you've had a remarkable journey.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm really excited to be back on the Hilltop.
And one of the things we want to share with our audience is a little bit about who you are. And let's start with that story. How can we define Nathalie Phan?
It's a little hard to do, I'll admit, but I am at heart a Houstonian. I was born and raised in Houston. I currently live in Houston. But above all things, I'm a Texan. My business is centered around helping Texas musicians receive licensing placements in film and television and advertising. And I run an agency called SoundSync Music that does exactly that.
And is that anything to do with OnVinyl Media? Is that a separate entity, or is that the natural transformation of OnVinyl?
So I started OnVinyl while I was in college, and OnVinyl has blossomed into the business entity that houses all of my creative projects, and SoundSync would be one of them.
And Nathalie, one of the things that I enjoyed about being in the classroom with you and many of your colleagues is the energy that you projected. And I think St. Edward's University is a special place. And I'd like for you, from your perspective, to kind of share your thoughts about what makes St. Edward's a unique place in the Austin ecosystem, but particularly in light of your background and how you see St. Edward's differentiating the educational experience for students.
St. Ed's is a really special place because Austin itself is a city in which you can foster ideas and really have the community necessary to support you in your entrepreneurial journey and bring your business up to a successful level. St. Ed's is a great place to start in the city because of the community here. And it's kind of a micro ecosystem of people who are willing to lend their expertise. They're willing to help guide you, mentor you, and help you get started in that entrepreneurial journey.
And so, Nathalie, what would you say was the starting point for your entrepreneurial mindset? What got you into this space?
I originally wanted to go into journalism when I was a student at St. Edward's, and I majored in digital media management and minored in communications because of that goal of going into journalism. But I soon found myself in a peculiar situation where I had the opportunity to partner up with another student, Austin Marshall. And together we started a radio station here at St. Ed's campus called Topper Radio. And it took us about a year to start it up, but soon we had a staff of 60 students who were all fueled on barely any sleep at all, but all of the ambition and creativity in the world. And together we created a really beautiful organization on campus that still exists to this day.
And let me stop you right there, because Hilltopper Radio is one of those asterisks that really will separate the university and its students. Part of the story, as I remember it, is that it was the first of its kind, because it's not a traditional, let's put a big tower and let's beam the signal out there like an AM or FM radio would. It was all online. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. When I was a student, I found mentorship with Professor Greg Perry, who was here teaching the digital media management program. And he made us aware that we can go one of two routes. We can do broadcast radio, or we could do internet-based radio. And we didn't have millions of dollars to put up a tower, and also the school probably would have frowned upon that. So we decided to go the route of least friction. So we started an internet station, which was more successful than we ever thought it would be. We just thought, okay, we're just going to have a fun student-run radio station. We're going to do it all ourselves, and we'll see what happens. But it really blossomed into this thing that won a lot of acknowledgments from the overall internet radio community.
So before we move from that achievement, let me put a cap on it by asking you, did you not actually build the culture that supported Hilltop Radio, much like many of the entrepreneurs that have now become legends, whether the Steve Jobs of the world or the Bill Gates of the world, where it wasn't just the product or service or idea that was implemented, it was starting an organization that supported that mindset, that opportunity recognition that led to other innovations. Is that putting a little bit too much into it? Or now reflecting back, is that what you actually also built, a culture to support Hilltop Radio?
I didn't think of it that way when I created the organization, but it definitely taught me a lot about creating culture, yes. And what ended up happening was we received almost zero funding from the school to start this project. So it was very much a DIY project. And when we put it all together, we wanted to have a launch party. And one of the best stories that I can tell is for this launch party, we wanted to use a stage, and we couldn't find one here on campus. So we knew that we had to build one. So what happened was Austin and I went on Craigslist. We looked up free wood pallets. We went and picked up some wood pallets out of my RAV4, brought it back to the school parking lot, which I think now is a building. But back then there was a parking lot that we gathered with our other staff members, and together as a team, we built a stage for that launch party using just power tools. Someone's FJ Cruiser had a power outlet in the back. We plugged up a bunch of tools, started building the stage, decorated the stage, and the next day we had our launch party. And then eventually that stage turned into a chicken coop at someone's house. That's the power of St. Ed's, is there's nothing stopping us. We're going to do this. It's going to be DIY, but we're going to be really proud of our accomplishments, and at the same time, it built a really great culture.
That's a great transition to the next topic that I want to talk about, which is leveraging limited resources. And it seems like the entrepreneurial mindset is all about figuring out how to do, for lack of a better word, the minimal viable product, the lean startup before you actually are able to launch the final product. And that has continued, I would assume, to be a challenge that you have faced in your entrepreneurial journey. And how have resources changed, not just in the Austin ecosystem, but in the industry, in the genre that you inhabit?
The music industry here was a really great place for me to cut my teeth. I mean, Austin is the live music capital of the world, and it taught me a lot about the live music scene here in Austin. And I met some really great mentors along the way, and people that I really respect as some really close colleagues now. But I eventually I reached my limit in how valuable it was for me to be in Austin. And I eventually had to make several trips out to LA when I was growing my business in order to connect more so on a nationwide level So I feel like Austin, if it weren't for Austin, though, I wouldn't have been able to build those connections so quickly. The community here is unmatched in the level of how quickly you can get integrated into the music world. Like, there are so many people who want to see you succeed, and they're going to help you along the way. Whereas if I started in LA or elsewhere, the culture is really different. People are a little bit more cutthroat. There are far more professionals, but they're at a very high level to the point where the barrier of entry is super high. But here, everyone's super friendly, everyone's very chill, and it allowed me to really get balanced before I could move myself on to the next level.
And of course, that was the Austin that I remember many moons ago when it was more of a sleepy college town. But now, after the world has found Austin because of ACL, because of South by, because of Formula One, because of everything else that's going on, Austin is no longer that little college town. It is now the 10th largest city in the United States. And if you look at the skyline, you won't recognize Austin if you haven't been here in a few years. So how have you become the role model for your industry, for your peer group, and for St. Edward's? And I don't think that you ever have said you are a role model. It is people like myself who have observed your transformation that I'm bold enough to say, well done. You have become a role model. How has that come about with your network? What's the secret sauce of who you align with, the incubators, the accelerators, the support groups, et cetera?
So the agency that I built represents about 60 different Austin artists now. And the strategy that I employed was I saw an opportunity outside of live music. I wanted to go into songwriting and recorded music, and there was no one filling that gap for the artists. There was a huge gap in the streams of revenue that artists could take advantage of, and a lot of them weren't even aware that that existed for them. So I wanted to go in there and improve my community in that way. That's why I started SoundSync, and the agency has helped generate hundreds of thousands of dollars for artists outside of live music, and I'm hoping that's going to be the legacy that I leave Austin with.
And, just as a side note, music is everywhere. It's now streaming, it's available live, it's available in so many different formats. And kind of a takeaway for those who are listening or will be listening to this podcast is, how have you seen the music scene evolve in the Austin area? I know that now we have different genres, but how has that changed from what was the Willie Nelson type of atmosphere, and now you have these mega concerts that seem to be everywhere?
I've heard a lot about how Austin's kind of lost its identity as a live music city, and I don't completely disagree, but I would say instead that Austin has transformed its identity. It's incorporating a lot more technology, and I think in part that's due to South by Southwest being a conference of convergence between technology, film, and music. It's drawn a lot more people from the tech world, and there's a lot of new money in the city. I would really, really like to see that new money support the arts and music. But, of course, the music community is extremely resilient here. There are a lot of musicians that still live here. And what I want to do for them is provide them with an opportunity to try to explore another way of generating revenue with their own businesses.
Very good. So let's just take a pause right here, and we'll be back in just a few. Well, thank you again for listening to Hilltop Podcast. I'm Tony Alvarado, and we're at the Digital Media Center on the second floor of Munday Library, St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. And our guest today is Nathalie Phan. And just so that you know, our podcast is going to end with some takeaways for you, our listening audience. And we're also going to have sort of a speed round of fun questions to kind of get into the human side of our guest and see what makes them laugh and have some fun. But let's return to the topic of the entrepreneurial journey of Nathalie Phan. And Nathalie, you talked about the niche that you found for your company. And can you expound a little bit more on that, particularly from the standpoint of the challenges that you faced as a young woman and the support network or lack thereof and barriers that perhaps you experienced?
Yes, so my agency services a lot of marginalized musicians. So a lot of women musicians, people of color, and I, of course, find myself in that very subsect of identity. I'm an Asian woman of color, the daughter of two Vietnamese refugees who came to this country with literally nothing but the shirt on their back. And with that identity, it's really led me in my values my entire life. Both of my parents became entrepreneurs. They both run their own businesses. And it really inspired me to pursue that path in my life as well. But it wasn't always easy because, like I had mentioned, there are certain intersections that provide a little bit more of a challenge for you. And for me, it's just a way of life. It's my everyday. I go through life, and if there's a challenge, I know that I can overcome it. If anything, I see it as a strength. And I feel like a lot of the strong women around me see it in the same way. It's just a way of life. Let's not cry about it. Let's do something about it. And because of that, I feel like women oftentimes are such strong communicators. They know exactly what kind of challenges they can get through, and it just makes them stronger people. So, my message to all the women entrepreneurs out there is don't be afraid to pursue whatever goals you have in life because you've been through worse, and if anything, it just makes you stronger.
And it's also led me to think about the world is changing at an incredibly fast rate, quantum leaps, if you will. Today, you can't open any kind of online platform, read any article that somehow doesn't have AI or chat GPT, and of course, all the externalities of the world that we can't even control. But what is your message, Nathalie, to a student who is basically saying, hey, well, that's great. Nathalie found her niche and she's going to be in that world forever and ever. Are you going to be in that world forever and ever? Or are you going to grow and navigate the stream and go in a different way?
Or get replaced by AI.
Or get replaced by AI. How do we talk to students today and give them the confidence of saying, the entrepreneurial journey awaits you and don't be afraid?
I think right now it's kind of a guessing game of what's going to happen. And people have different theories about AI and its impact, but I'll say this. AI is a piece of technology that is extremely helpful. It's going to help a lot of businesses become more efficient. At the same time, with every single piece of technology that comes out, there are downsides. There are risks. And, it's like when the knife came out, the first knife ever. Before you're just tearing things up with your hands, now you have a convenient tool to cut things with. It changed everything. Fire changed everything. The wheel changed everything. But of course, there are going to be major downsides that come with that. And we as a human species need to come together, come up with a responsible and ethical way to move forward. Because whether or not we like it, that technology's it exists. It's not going back into the whatever box it came out of. It exists now. We have to learn how to live with it and adapt. The second thing that I'll say is, in terms of growth, we're told as children that we can be whatever we want to be. And for some people, that might come with more challenges than others. And I agree with that premise. You can work towards your goals and try to be as successful as possible. At the same time, help uplift the other people who might not have the same background as you, might not have the same resources. And beyond that, you don't have to continue to do that one thing for the rest of your life. When you were a child, you probably wanted to be some sort of astronaut or a doctor, or, you wanted to be a cowboy. And for some people, that didn't pan out because life changes. Like, your responsibilities, your priorities change. You might start a family one day, and that might change how you feel about certain things. There might be new ethical issues that arise that really get you fired up, and you want to dedicate your life to that one issue. So don't put yourself in a box and say, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. You can get really good at it. If you really want it, you should focus on it. But eventually, if people ask me, what's your dream job? I'd say music licensing. I am living my dream job right now. But at some point, that might change for me. I've always had the goal of becoming a professor at a college someday. So I'm going to have to eventually go back to school and get a degree in doing that, or maybe law. It really, you shouldn't confine yourself to what your goal was 10, 20, 30 years ago. You could be like Professor Alvarado here, and you can go into law, then you can be a professor, then you can be a podcast presenter, and who knows what's next. Professor Alvarado might want to be a professional skydiver.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because most of the things that I want to do now, my doctors and family members say, you probably don't want to do that. Broken bones don't heal as fast as when you were a young person. But let me play back a little bit of what I heard you say, Nathalie, as we move on toward the end of our podcast, where we're going to ask some fun questions and then do a final takeaway or two. I heard you talk about opportunity recognition. You didn't actually use this word, but anyone listening, for those of us here in the studio, we sensed your passion, that you really are excited about what you do. And so it's about playing to your strengths and having the self-assessment and maybe critical inputs from others. But I also heard you talk about goals and how I assume those formulate your vision of where you want to go. Did I miss anything, or is that succinctly kind of encapsulating your message to us today?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Is if you have a goal, you're going to have challenges. You can overcome those challenges. You can help others overcome their challenges. That's the St. Ed's way. And beyond that, your goals can change, and you don't have to feel any guilt, or you don't have to feel like you're a failure just because you want to do something different than what you had in mind.
Bingo. That is great. Well, music licensing is right on topic, because just before we started our podcast recording today, we were talking about having some music. And somebody said, well, if you only use less than 30 seconds of recorded music that is copyright, you'll be fine. And then the lawyer and me, and I think you validated it, Nathalie, since this is your space, that, well, technically it's still copyright infringement. But you just mentioned AI, and I'm wondering, well, if we get a Chat GPT bot to actually put some music together that sounds like Taylor Swift but isn't Taylor Swift, and we use that, is Taylor Swift going to be upset and her publishing company coming after us? And of course, those are the questions of a lifetime that people in law school right now are probably grappling with. Yes. But you are front and center on everything that is going to be impacting the lives of our students and our society. So are you ready for some fun questions, or is there anything else you want to add to the takeaways that we want to know about?
I will let the legal scholars and perhaps the Supreme Court of the future determine the future of our Copyright Act and how it applies to AI. My strong suspicion is that there are going to have to be new provisions added to the Copyright Act soon to accommodate some of the new technologies that we have. But, that's life for the last 100 years.
And this is just a little plug for St. Edward's University and the Bill Munday School of Business. But we have digital law courses. We have digital media management. Our master's program delves into digital analytics and everything that is out there. So, yes, there is room at the end at the university for innovation. So, fun question time. What's your favorite food?
Crawfish.
And what restaurant would you like to go to that serves your favorite food that you would recommend or think pretty crazy good?
In Austin, Texas, my favorite place for crawfish would be Shoal Creek.
And I know that you have now moved to the Houston environment where you are originally from. Where would you go in Houston for crawfish?
I'm reacquainting myself with the Houston food scene. I live just north of the Heights, and the Heights has some really great food options. Recently, I went to BB's Tex for some crawfish, and that was delicious, so I'd have to say that place.
Excellent. So now this is a little more complicated because I'm going to give you a lot of options here. And we're talking about what has had the most impact on you, or what is your favorite source of either entertainment or news or both in terms of a movie, a book, a streaming or cable show or program, a podcast other than Hilltop Podcast, or any event that you either frequently attend, participate in, that you believe you really enjoy?
I think I have to say Succession for this one.
Ooh.
I recently finished Succession. It was the one show where I would plop myself down on the couch every Sunday at 8 o'clock and wait for it to come on HBO and turn it on and watch it live as, I haven't done that since I had cable. So Succession really was extremely well scripted, well done. The acting was incredible, and I'm really sad that it ended.
What thing about you, and that is an experience or maybe a hobby, anything that you don't, mind sharing with us, that you would think most people would not commonly know about you, that is either humorous or funny, surprising, and dare I say, embarrassing?
So as the daughter of immigrants, both of my parents have accents, and they put me up in an English-speaking household for the most part, but they would mispronounce certain things. So up until I was the age of 10, I would pronounce certain things the way that they would pronounce it. So instead of saying Home Depot, I would say Home Depot, and that always got a laugh out of my friends. But yeah, other than that, you can play me in tennis. I'm really bad at it, but I enjoy being bad. Let's see, what else?
Well, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, enough embarrassing facts about me.
We now know the human side of Nathalie Phan. Well, it's really been exciting talking to you today, and very, very enjoyable. I know that there are probably going to be people that would want to contact you or maybe invite you back for a follow-up podcast, and hopefully we'll have a student that is actually in my place, and the message and the chemistry will be a little different. But if you don't mind, if somebody wants to contact you, how do they go about doing that?
They can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at natfantastic, or you can email me at nat@soundsyncmusic.com.
Well, thank you very much. And this pretty much concludes this episode, and I think we titled it A1. of our Hilltop podcast. We hope that you will continue listening for the next installment. We want to thank St. Edward's University, the Digital Media Center at the Munday Library, particularly the staff here for their help and support. We couldn't have done it without them. And so until next time, this is Tony Alvarado signing off. Thank you, Nathalie Phan.
Thank you.